Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Valeria and this is the Off-Road Ranch. Recently, in the beginning of 2024, I built a small house using frame technology. However, less than a year later, I had to completely rebuild the house. Remove all the paneling, add insulation, beams, lintels, seal all joints and gaps with construction tape, replace the subfloor, replace the electrical wiring and all the plumbing, buy and install new paneling, repaint the house, replace the entire large facade and paint it. I had to sleep in a trailer for several months in the winter, cook on a campfire and constantly breathe in construction dust during construction work. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Ranch. It is the middle of February and for more than a month I've been sleeping in my trailer. Let's check the temperature inside this morning. It is plus 6 degrees Celsius and it means that outside it is around minus 10. So this is how my warm air blower looks like, with two bricks in order to make it somehow warmer. You see, it is not 6 degrees Celsius on the bottom of the trailer. Also, I had to pay for the work of a new construction crew and new material. Today I will talk about the restoration of my house and give recommendations so that you do not make the same mistakes I did. At the end of the summer, I faced three problems. Hornets settled in the large facade, woodworm began to appear in the house's wooden foundation, and hundreds of flies began to appear out of nowhere inside the house, which I constantly had to spray with insecticide. The hornet nests meant that next spring and summer I wouldn't be able to live here. The woodworm meant that in 5-10 years these insects would eat my house. And the hundreds of flies meant that they were breeding somewhere behind the paneling inside the house when they flew into the house through gaps. When the severe frost hit, I discovered that with the convectors constantly running at maximum, the temperature in the house barely reached 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 15-16 degrees Celsius. I was constantly cold, especially in my feet. I started getting sick all the time, my neck felt draughty, and I woke up with a stuffy nose and sore throat. When I contacted the builders who had constructed the house, they refused to take responsibility. They told me that I had accepted the house and put into operation, so I couldn't make any claims, and this wasn't a warranty case. What I discovered later cost me almost $20,000 and several months of demolition, construction, and repairs. First of all, I bought a thermal imager, heated the house with convectors and heat guns as much as possible, and measured all corners and crevices myself. The temperature in all corners was just over 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius. It was only 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius at the point where the cables entered the house. And it was 23 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 5 degrees Celsius near the front door inside the house. I realized that the situation was very serious. I inspected the house not only inside, but also outside. I was shocked when I saw that at a temperature of 8 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 13 degrees Celsius outside, the heat was coming out of the roof at 43 degrees Fahrenheit, 6 degrees Celsius. However, even under these conditions, the builders told me that this wasn't a warranty case. First of all, my thermal imager is not industrial and doesn't have a laboratory certification. And secondly, I do not understand construction, and overall, these indicators are acceptable. So I had to take matters into my own hands. I went through 7 construction crews before I found ones who treated customers responsibly and respectfully. They listened to me, worked every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and didn't drink alcohol. They analyzed the condition of the house and recommended that I hire the services of a blower door before carrying out any repair work. They recommended that a licensed laboratory check the house for air permeability and provided official data on the condition of the house. A blower door cost me $360 for each visit by specialist, with an official report from the laboratory. I conducted tests with the blower door 3 times during several stages of the house's restoration. The blower door works as follows. First, the technician measures the temperature and pressure outside and inside the house. Then, all windows, ventilation passages, and sewer pipes must be closed. A special frame covered with fabric is sealed onto the front door with a fan in the center that builds up pressure. The technician conducts 2 tests. Increases the pressure inside the house and then reduces the pressure inside the house. If there are no cracks or holes in the house, it will be easy to increase the pressure and then reduce it. If there are holes in the house through which air enters from the street, then a strong draft will blow from there and the air door will have difficulty maintaining the required pressure. It is best to carry out the work during the cool season so that the temperature difference between inside and outside is more visible. It is also advisable to carry out the work in calm weather for more accurate results. Undoubtedly, additional calculations will be made in winter conditions, but without wind, the results will be ready faster. It turned out that the draftiness in my house was so severe that the house was practically uninhabitable. All these events were very difficult for me psychologically, and for some time I even took sedatives. First of all, I was very angry with the builders who treated the project with such disrespect and got away scot-free. Secondly, I wasn't even sure if I would be able to restore the house so that it would serve me for many more years. Secondly, I realized that I would have to spend all my savings. And fourthly, I realized that I would have to live in terrible conditions in winter, because restoring the house is much more difficult than construction. Moreover, when building a house, the cost of work is calculated based on the complexity of the project. But when restoring or renovating, you have to pay for each day of work. With this approach, it is difficult to find people who will work quickly and efficiently, because the longer restoration takes, the higher the cost. The cost of all construction work, regardless of the type, cost me $5,130 in January and $3,780 in February. Materials and consumables were paid for separately. The builders immediately suggested starting with replacing the wooden facade of the house. Large gaps are not only nests for hornets and wasps. In winter, they let in cold air and significantly cool the house down. We install new latch almost flush. Small gaps will not let cold air in and will prevent insects from building their nests behind the facade. I wanted to treat the plank with protective oil right away in winter, but I was advised to wait for stable, warm, dry weather, so I did it in April. The new planks cost me $1,900. $1,500 for the planks, considering that I was able to sell the old planks, and $400 for stainless steel screws. During the work, the builders also treated the house's framework 4 times with a concentrated antiseptic to protect it from insect pests, beetles, mold, and wood-destroying fungi. After installing the new latch, we began the interior restoration of the house. So, what upsets and disappointments did I encounter every day while builders were restoring the house? To start with, the first builders didn't lay enough insulation. In some places, there were even holes that were not visible because of the floor and panel. Perhaps they secretly stole it or sold it when I wasn't looking. I think so because I had to buy 10 more packages of insulation, and that amount is enough for a new small house. Second, it turned out that they didn't reinforce the walls and floor in some places. I had to measure the levels to make sure that the house was level and that the boards and walls hadn't shifted or tilted during a year of use. I had to buy additional lumber to reinforce the window frame, the attic, and the staircase base. Thirdly, they practically didn't seal the insulation film at the joints with construction tape. This film is necessary to prevent moisture and cold from entering the house. All joints of the film must be properly sealed with construction tape. The tightness of the insulation film is one of the ways to check the house for drafts. They also left holes in the film with nails and screws, and although it seems like a minor detail, these holes caused significant drafts, especially in a small house. Fourth, they didn't properly seal the windows after installing them. In some places the membrane tore, and in others the construction foam began to deteriorate. The window sills were installed incorrectly, and the large 4-meter high window wasn't reinforced. I also had serious concerns that the load-bearing walls, and especially the corners of the house, were installed incorrectly. Corners are the most critical areas. They often become black holes for heat loss, as well as areas of moisture penetration and rot. To my relief, the corners were laid correctly and insulation was laid everywhere. Nevertheless, a tremendous amount of work was done and a huge amount of money was spent. You can see all the expenses for house reconstruction on the screen. $190 for insulation, $110 for reinforced construction tape, $810 for brand new paneling, $610 for gasoline for logistics of the trailer, $1,700 for monthly rent for the construction workers' cabin and fuel, and so on. Additionally, I bought a UV flashlight to check each board for mold and mildew. Although these builders were skilled, I was in the house 24/7, supervising all the work, asking thousands of questions and checking everything they did. I also invited a home engineering system specialist to check all the cables and water supply system. It turned out that the electrical wiring had also been installed incorrectly. The builders laid the electrical wiring on top of the film, so they pierced the film everywhere, creating numerous holes for cold air to enter. They should have laid the cables to the wood and then laid the film on top. In addition, the cable entries were not insulated or protected from the cold at all, so cold air was constantly blowing out of the sockets. In fact, the entire cable entry area had no insulation, no construction foam, no film, no tape, and the temperature there was only 3-5 degrees Celsius. I paid $360 for the electrical installation, including the work after the paneling was installed. In addition, the first builders also completely botched the plumbing. They installed the cheapest and smallest pipes for the water supply. First, they would quickly fail due to high temperatures. Second, with a sequential layout and a large number of water consumers, the water pressure in the water supply system would drop. In my case, I needed 2 water supply manifolds for hot and cold water with parallel connection of each appliance. Removing the old plumbing system and installing the new one cost me $110. The new pipes and 2 manifolds cost $170. At the penultimate stage of the work, after renovating the entire house but before installing new paneling, I invited specialists once again to check the house for air leaks with air door and thermal imaging. They revealed the remaining defects, which only professional measurements could show. After the defects were eliminated, I ordered another check with an air door and a thermal imager, and only when I was satisfied with the quality of the work did the builders install the panel. 2 air door checks cost another $720. Wall painting services were quite expensive, so I painted the house myself in 3 coats. 4 9-liter cans of white paint cost me $485 and 3 weeks of work on scaffolding. In total, the entire renovation of the house, or more precisely its complete dismantling and complete reassembly and installation of all systems, cost me $17,885. I think this is a very large amount not only for me, but for most ordinary people. Unfortunately, legally, I was unable to hold the first builders accountable, and I spent almost all the money I had saved for construction with the onset of warm weather. Despite all this, I was very lucky that at the time of the renovation, I didn't lay laminate flooring and baseboards and didn't install a staircase. Because in that case, the cost of restoring the house would have been even more expensive, as I would have had to buy new laminate floor. If I had had to dismantle the staircase, I doubt that it would have been suitable for installation in its original form, without defects, without squeaking, and with a beautiful aesthetic appearance. What recommendations can I give on building a frame house based on my knowledge and experience besides what I have already shared with you. These are mainly points that are often overlooked. So, the right design. A large window provides a beautiful view, lots of light, natural heating of the room, and a sense of space. But at the same time, they are a source of cold in winter. Therefore, it is advisable to raise any floor-to-ceiling windows slightly above the floor, literally 5 centimeters, to prevent drafts across the floor due to temperature differences. Secondly, you need a powerful radiator or thermal curtain covering the entire window to compensate for heat loss. This may not seem like the most aesthetically pleasing or cost-effective solution, but your comfort during long-term living will cover minor shortcomings. You should think about proper insulation of the corners of the house if the window and door are flush with the corner. For example, there is practically no distance between my door and window, making it almost impossible to lay insulation there. A small threshold in the house and proper insulation of the door perimeter during installation. It seems that a small threshold will interfere with stepping over it, but the absence of a threshold is an additional area of fault. Make sure that the door is installed correctly both inside and outside. The project also includes electrical and sewage layout. You need to understand the final result of the house. You should hire a competent designer who will definitely work together with an experienced comprehensive builder who specializes in the selected type of construction technology. Only then will the house design be comprehensive and of the highest quality. Depending on your budget or preferences, you may be offered basic layouts, the possibility of developing a technical project, or a turnkey design and construction with support. You can develop the entire project yourself, but this will require a lot of knowledge. In any case, the better you understand your home in terms of design and technical aspects, the more comfortable it will be in the future. Correct installation of the house's framing and load-bearing structure. Correct laying of the house's corners. Since it will be impossible to lay installation there, the corners must be made using the warm corner technology. Choose technically dry timber for the load-bearing frame. Otherwise, the structure of the house may change in the future as the timber dries out. Treating wood against fungi and mold using the correct technology, rather than save time and money. If insects eat your house, it is a big problem. Build the house in dry weather and check the moisture percentage of the boards and all materials supplied with a special device. If necessary, cover the frame with plastic sheeting and dry the house with a powerful heat gun. I had to do this because my house was built in the fall and winter. Use a highly vapor-permeable super diffusion membrane. Throughout the entire time you live in the house, it will remove moisture from the house and will prevent moisture from the outside from penetrating inside. The main thing is to lay the membrane with the correct side facing up. Lay the insulation using the correct technology. In my case, this means several layers overlapping each other in a checkerboard pattern to eliminate cold spots. Also, do not allow the insulation to get wet. If it does, it can no longer be used. All insulation must be covered with a vapor-proof film and sealed with construction tape everywhere. Any gaps in the tape will create cold spots where drafts will come in. Nail and screw holes also let in a lot of cold, even though they seem insignificant. Do not forget to cover the house's framework with rodent mesh, especially around sewer and electrical connections. Try to minimize the use of construction foam outside the house, for example, under the house. Small animals and insects, such as rats, ants, termites, like to use construction foam to build their homes. If they come into your house, you won't be able to get rid of them. If the facade of your house is covered with wood, such as larch, pine, or oak boards, take into account the expansion of the wood when it gets wet and when the temperature changes. Also, don't forget to put mesh behind the boards to protect against insects. For outdoor installation, use stainless steel screws. Even galvanized metal will leave black marks and streaks on the wood after rains over the time. Some construction crews suggest that instead of quality restoration, they simply fill all the holes with construction foam. But this is not a solution. Construction foam will deteriorate over the time. Not only it will cease to function properly, but also you will be breathing in these particles. Secondly, the structure of the house will remain fluid, and over the time in the future, you will have to pay even more money to redo everything after you lay the floor, install furniture, lay the sewage systems, and so on. Reinforce the floor properly. In the future, you will put a lot of weight on the floor. Stairs, kitchen, sofa, bed, and so on. If the floor is poorly reinforced, it will begin to sag, creak, and distribute the load unevenly. Don't spend money on a big porch or terrace. You can build it separately in the future. If I had refused to build a terrace, I would have had additional 4 square meters in the house, which is a lot, since my entire house with an attic is 40 square meters, and 4 square meters is a 10% increase in area. That could be a large wardrobe, a shoe cabinet, or storage space for household items. But now it's just a territory, and for 3 months of the year this territory is covered with snow, for another 3 months this territory is under rains, and the rest of the time birds constantly try to build nests there. So build the porch separately. It's no problem. Study the basics of plumbing and electrical work. Which cables are best to use? Which pipes are suitable? You also need to have logic and order in line communications, so that you do not accidentally puncture cable when hanging a shelf, a TV, or kitchen cabinet on the wall. Install more sockets. Currently, I need sockets for my laptop, phone, flashlight, hair dryer, wrench hood, screwdriver, angle grinder, lamps, fairy lights, router, and so on. And in the future, there will be a refrigerator, washing machine, dishwasher, coffee machine, microwave, blender, and so on and so on. So add more sockets. Install lighting sockets outside the house. You will need lighting in front of the house. You will need extension cords, and you will want to hang garlands on the house for Christmas. Install smart home equipment, at least the minimum. Control lighting, radiators, water heating, leak detectors, temperature and humidity control, air conditioning. This will add much more comfort than you think. Any noisy equipment in a frame house should be eliminated. A frame house doesn't insulate sound very well, and it doesn't dampen vibration very well, so it may cause discomfort. Although a frame house is built quickly, if you have the opportunity, postpone painting the walls, laying the finished floor, and installing stairs and furniture for 6 months. Check after 6 months if you have any questions about the ventilation and air tightness of the house. Film all the processes. Take photos of all stages. Record conversations with builders, and install cameras on construction site, including on building materials. This will give you a high quality work, a guarantee in case of disputes, and will help you to avoid questions in the future when you decide whether there is a cable where you want to hang your TV and whether there is floor reinforcement where your stairs will be. And of course, be present at the construction site yourself. If you don't care, the construction crew won't care either. Some builders say that the owner should be unknowledgeable about construction. Some say this because an experienced owner will not see their mistakes and indifferent attitude towards the project. Others say this because they believe that the client's corrections and recommendations will interfere with their work, and the responsibility in this case will fall on the owner. But I don't remember builders ever taking full and honest responsibility for their mistakes in the future. I believe that the owner must understand the process well enough or hire an independent expert at all stages of work. And even in this case, the owner needs to understand the stages and processes. It is advisable to understand the stages of construction and the basic rules before starting construction, so as not to interfere with the work of others. I hope that my experience and advice will be useful to anyone who is going to build their own house. Even if it is not a frame house, you understand that you need to make a lot of effort to ensure a high-quality approach. As for frame houses, they are a good and affordable option for building your own home, including for permanent residence. However, like any type of house, a frame house is not suitable for everyone. It has its pros and cons, like with any technology. In my case, at this stage of my life, according to the off-road range development project, this is a good option. Of course, if I didn't have to completely rebuild the house, I would be living in more comfortable conditions now. But in reality, I will never know. Now I'm moving forward, planning work for 2026, working on the hedge fund project, cutting rebar and preparing pipes for posts to be painted. Dear friends, I wish you a careful approach to your work, attentive study in new spheres, and honest and responsible people on your path. It was Valeria, the off-road wrench. I wish you all the best and see you soon.